Rajiv Singal, MD of Plaksa Solutions. With over 15 years in the mechanical and construction industry, Rajiv Singal excels in operation, R&D engineering, sales, business development, and entrepreneurship. His expertise lies in bridging the gap between technology and business operation, enabling to connect seamlessly with both C-level executives and hand-on managers or technicians. Since 2017, he has expanded markets and product portfolios across Asia Pacific, collaborating with industry giants like Tata Steel and Ultratech to drive mechanization in India's infrastructure and construction sector. Rajiv will present a talk on plaster and machine applied plastering for a sustainable future. So let's welcome Rajiv.
Thank you so much, Vinisha, for such a wonderful introduction. And given the paucity of time, I would right away jump into the presentation. While I bring in the presentation online, I would like to highlight or thank all the esteemed panelists because what they have presented today is absolutely essential for a sustainable future and a future which is, Dr. Nilesh said, whatever we have inherited is actually not our right, but it is a loan that we have from our kids and from their kids. Actually, it's from our grandchildren and their children because we have to leave this planet to them for living for. I'll just briefly present. We as a company has been existing since 2009, and we have incorporated or we have introduced a lot of different innovative technologies, focusing on sustainable and efficient use of energy. Some of the technologies that we promoting in India, including this machine applied plastering that I will be covering up today, and also insulated building. Jumping into the presentation. So when we say sustainable plasters, everybody knows plaster, it's omnipresent. But when we say sustainable plaster, some people will talk about gypsum, which is naturally occurring, reduced water demand for curing, or lime, which is again naturally occurring but is also CO2 absorbing, clay, which is both naturally occurring as well as is thermally insulating, and then thermally insulating plasters, which reduce thermal transmittance, they are lighter weight, and they improve energy efficiency. But let's not forget the cement-based plaster that we have been known, in the last 100 years or so. And yes, they are also sustainable. I will delve on why and how. I'm sure most of us have seen these kind of facades. In fact, we see these kind of facades every day during our daily routine of life, whether it is in the buildings or apartments where we are living, or when we are moving across, we see such apartments, such external facade is very common to see. Before we delve into why plaster and what we mean by plaster, let's have a brief history of plaster. The very first plasters were earthen, so they were simple mixtures of clay with sand and some straw. It required no furnaces. They could be dried easily. So that was the first, because that is the material easily available to the mankind. We are talking 10,000 years ago when we started agriculture, and started building up roads. Then Egyptians and Greeks, they discovered use of gypsum and lime for plastering. They had those fire kilns made with gypsum or lime, and when those kilns due to the extreme temperatures, they became a powder. They doused this powder with water, and that quickly hardened up. So that is how your lime and gypsum plastering came into play. And this again is over 2,000 years ago. We're not saying something which is very recent. Then the Romans, they discovered hydraulic lime and the addition of porcelains. And we all attribute concrete to the Roman heritage. It's something which has been provided by left over by the Romans. And as cement was discovered, a superior strength and hardness of cement plaster was the key factor why it was promoted, why it got so promulgated into the world. So in a sense, while the materials and the tools advanced, the essence of plastering remains rooted in its ability to strengthen and protect the structures. So that is the basic element why we use plasters. This basic premise why we use. So role of plasters in structures, we have seen this before as well. So the role is, of course, the first and foremost, from an architectural point of view, is also the aesthetics, is the ornamental. It was used as an ornamental element through for centuries, and also helped in cultural representation. So whether it was the White Houses or the churches, or even the Parliament House, plaster has been used extensively uh, for such representations. And then protection from elements such as rain, fire, heat, etc. The English required the plaster, the mandated plaster, fire protection plasters in the 13th century when a fire broke out around the Thames River. They protect the building structures from molds and mildew. They protect it from physical damages, whatever you can say. It's the first level of protection, as Dr. Nilesh said, before in his presentations, in his talk, is the skin of the building. Plaster is the basic skin of the building, which protects the inside of the building from all the different elements. Insulation. Sometimes people use plasters, thermally insulated, acoustic insulated, or fire protection plaster. That is also one of the rules. Plaster, in a sense, whatever we are doing with all these three things, in a sense, is increasing the life of the building and requires calls for a lower maintenance. So we are saying reduce consumption of materials and construction related pollution. As I mentioned earlier, plaster is ubiquitous, yet it is often neglected and hated by project managers. So now we have seen plasters as such, what role they are playing into the building envelope. We come to machine applied plasters, as I mentioned before during the talk. They are 10 to 25% lighter. So that means you reduce the material consumption for your building. They require little or no curing. So that means you reduce the water consumption, which is a scarce resource as is. They call for a better adhesion. So the building has a longer life, requires less maintenance. Dust suppressing, that means reduced emission at the time of construction. And they also have what we call as energy efficient material lifting. So in normal building construction, if you're lifting material, if you're lifting sand, we're using all those big frames and heavy elements. The energy consumed in those kind of lifting arrangements or lifting systems is 4 to 5 times of what can be used through these machines. So you reduce your energy consumption dramatically, and of course they're much faster. So when it comes to selecting plasters for a sustainable future, it has to be selected on two parameters in general. One is as per the local conditions. So you require, for example, breathable plasters such as lime plasters for areas with high moisture, especially coastal areas. And you may want thermally insulating plasters or regulating plasters for areas with high temperature variation, for example, Delhi or these kind of central plains. And as per application as well, you would go for gypsum or clay plasters for internal applications, but you would go for lime and cement plasters for external. Overall, more than anything else, the biggest thing, the main idea of my discussion is plasters as such. They enhance the life of the building, the durability of the building, and the longer the durability of the building, the longer the life of the building, the less construction you require to do through the decades. As we all know, we need to build a new India in the next 30 years. So if we are able to increase the life of our buildings, number one. Number two, repurpose the buildings. One very good example of repurposing the building is everybody knows probably the Bombay Exhibition Center in Goregaon, Mumbai, and it was a factory which has been repurposed as a exhibition center. Repurposing the building, reusing the building. So we have this for environmental sustainable goals. Reduce reuse, recycle. So if we focus on the first two parameters as well, instead of just recycling, to reduce and then to reuse. Reuse means repurposing the building, uh, creating building envelopes which are smaller yet sustainable for people and yet offer good living conditions. One good resource to go for that is YouTuber Never Too Small, coming from Australia, and they have over the last decade or so done hundreds of episodes on how you can get people, the younger generation, closer to the city center or closer to the areas where they're working, instead of sending them 50 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 80 kilometers away, living in the suburbs, spending time in transportation, of course, and burning, greenhouse emissions for all this travel. So if you are able to bring these people back to the places where they're working, you can reduce the obviously the greenhouse emissions, as well as you improve their living, you improve their life. That has to be sustainability goal. The people have to have uh, a possibility for a better living, but at the same time coexisting with nature.
Thank you, Rajiv, for educating us on plasters and machine applied plastering for a sustainable future.